Hi, I'm Virginia,
Hi, I'm Bianca.
and we are the identical twins from the Dying Movie Race. Okay, so first, before we start with our topic, big news happened this week in the movie world.
The Oscar nominees were announced, and although we aren't the biggest fans of modern movies, we still like to hear them. We like to see who wins.
Yeah, we normally try to, we weren't able to do it this year because we were very busy. The only two movies I saw that came out this year were Star Wars. I saw Star Wars and The Big Sick. Yeah. That was it. That's all I saw. You just saw Star Wars, right?
Yeah, I did. I just saw Star Wars.
You saw one. That's better. So I had two.
We don't. There are some modern actors we like, but we really don't go out of our way to watch a lot of modern movies.
No, but we will try to see, we normally try to see the nominees, and we normally try to see, Oscar-worthy films, especially after the nominations are announced, but we haven't. We've been busy. Yeah, we both work full-time jobs, and it's,
That doesn't mean we still can't root for people, because there are modern actors we do like.
Yeah.
And modern directors that we'd like to see win.
And there are movies that, a lot of the nominees this year, I'd be like, when I heard about them, I was like, yeah, I'd see that. If it was on, or, if they were streaming and they were cheap, I would watch them, I think.
I mean, Annette Bening was nominated, but
Bianca's gonna be she has to talk about this,
well, they didn't nominate her last year either, but
yeah, that was weird.
What does she have to do? Well, and she probably should have won already, let's just be honest here.
I remember, I told you online, it's when people talk about who the new Leo DiCaprio is, of somebody who doesn't have an Oscar and should win one, she's the one people mention first. They usually say her and Amy Adams because they've been nominated a lot and they've never won. I'm still bummed Arthur Kennedy never won.
I know. I think John Garfield never won, if he didn't win.
Cary Grant. Yeah, Kirk Douglas never won.
Deborah Carr didn't.
Nope. That's weird.
I know.
Richard Burton, Peter O'Toole.
Yeah, we can go all down the list. Eleanor Parker.
Oh my god.
Isn't
that
insane?
Is insane.
Who has more versatility than
Nobody.
Well, anyway, so for these Oscars, the only person I'm really actively rooting for is Willem Dafoe, who's nominated for Best Supporting Actor. And I don't know, he might not win because he's someone else who probably already should have won but didn't.
I do think that's what's interesting with this year compared to other years is that there's not really a lot of shoo-ins. It can go in a couple different directions. I because we watch the award show every year, and we'll probably be texting each other during it like we did last year during the whole envelope gate and everything. But we
not Warren's fault.
Nope. Hashtag not Warren's fault. Not Warren and Faye's fault. It was
the envelope guy's fault.
Yeah. Well, we all know that now.
Yeah.
But I mean, I always do. When there's not a shoe-in, I enjoy watching the show more.
Yeah, me too. Because then it's more unpredictable and it's a lot more fun.
And I mean, there are always people who, I do have a kind of a soft spot for winning, but not this year. I don't think I'd be bummed if somebody it's not one of those years where for me personally, where I'm really actively rooting for someone. So if they don't win, I'm gonna be sad.
Yeah, well, and like I said, for me, there's only one, so it's not really gonna be a big night. A couple years ago when it was Eddie Redmayne and Michael Keaton, we each were rooting for someone else. But it wasn't it didn't get ugly or anything.
It's all amicable. It wasn't to the point where. Well, I remember at one point when I told you, I said, well, Eddie Redmayne shouldn't win, and you were like, well, fuck you.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Did I say that?
No, but you meant it.
I meant it.
Yeah, you meant it.
It was in my eyes.
It was. Okay, well, we went on about this for long enough.
We mentioned this too because we'll be getting to Oscar month
next
month.
All of February, we do Oscar month.
Which we'll only be talking about old movies then, but we'll be talking about, like we always do. And we're more educated on.
Yeah, and where we actually saw the movies and stuff. Yeah.
Where we care more.
Yeah.
But we'll be talking about who we think should have won. For actor, actress, supporting actress.
It's similar to a blog post I did 2 years ago.
It's just now we're talking about it.
Now it's two opinions, and obviously my opinions change over time, and I see more movies over time. So again. opinions shift. So it will be a good discussion.
And some years are hard to determine.
Oh, I can't pick some years.
Some years I'm like, okay,
it can go. Some years I'm like, it can go to anybody.
This person won, that's fine.
Some years I'm really passionate. And 1 year I'm like, it could go to anyone.
1951. We won't get into that now, but that's the year we're passionate about.
Yeah. Yes.
Where our opinions differ from a lot of other people.
Yeah. There's gonna be some unpopular opinions, so that will be fun.
Yeah.
And we will.
And some disagreements. But nothing. We're gonna like yell at each other for.
No.
Okay, so
let's get to the stuff we're actually talking about.
Our topic is Hollywood scandals. This is something a lot of people seem to be interested in. There's a lot of books written about it. People just seem to clamor for more news about this.
One of the most famous books on old Hollywood is Hollywood Babylon.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one of those, even though
a lot of it's not true.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing with a lot of these, it's trying to tell fact from fiction, because there's a lot of like rumors that go around, and then when you dig deeper into it, you'll say, well, that's not true, that didn't happen. But
if you watch like the older show Mysteries and Scandals, that's really more like a
sensationalized version.
Yeah. But
interesting to watch.
But you get to see different people's opinions, people that knew this person. So that's always interesting to see.
And sometimes, like, so at least with that show, like, again, some of them were sensationalized, but others you were like, you know, okay, well, that really is a scandal. And, you know,
Oh, some of them I really did change my opinion on some of them from what I saw on that show. So
Dorothy Kilgallen's, I remember. That's and our dad read a book about her and was telling us about it. And that's an interesting one.
That is.
So ones like that are always
ones that you really can't separate the fact from the fiction, but you like to hear people's
and there's all these different theories about it, so it doesn't feel like too sensationalized, because there are all these.
It is pretty sensational to begin with.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, it's not to the point where, you know, we're just grasping at straws.
Exactly.
A
lot of scandals seem to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be getting into some of those that really seem like they're grasping at straws. So you want to start?
Okay. So first we're going to, and this is just sort of in a random order.
Yeah, we're not going to be talking about a lot of, we're not going to be talking about controversial, I mean really, really controversial ones. We're really just going to be talking about more ones that we feel strongly about.
Or that are interesting.
Yeah, that interest us, some people who we're very passionate about, and we want to like set our opinions straight on what we feel. So.
Alright, so first we're going to talk about Sammy Davis Jr. And this one, compared to others, it's minor.
It's really, well, obviously today it would not be a scandal whatsoever.
No, but that's why it seems minor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's probably why a lot of people don't really talk about it.
Yeah, it's one that I didn't know about until, like, I just remember one day casually reading about it. I was like, oh my gosh.
I remember you telling me about it, actually.
Yeah. Okay, so what happened with Sammy is basically, so this was the 1950s. And
late 50s.
Late 50s, yeah. And, so Sammy Davis Jr. was dating Kim Novak,
which I wish there were pictures of that. I'd like to see how cute of a couple they make. Of course
there aren't pictures of it.
Don't you want to see how cute of a couple they are?
I'm sure we know they would be a good couple. So they were dating, and Harry Cohn.
Oh. Great. Isn't he
the
wonderful?
Resident mogul asshole. Well, so he was obviously, for those unfamiliar, he was the head of Columbia and basically Hollywood's crudest, biggest dick, you know.
You're not going to read any nice thing about
No,
him.
Everyone hated his guts. At least, like, with Mayer, there were some people that were like, okay, he was nice to me. Not with Harry Cohn. Everyone hated him.
Or Dado sounds like, oh, well, he made good movies.
Like, no, you can't, like, Harry Cohn was, because he wasn't really making the movies. He was just dictating, and he was, a jerk. So, he basically hired gangsters, Johnny something, what's it, Reveille, it's, some gangster, well, anyway, some gangster at the time, who cares what his name was, that's what he wants us to remember him, well, anyway, so he hires a gangster, and said gangster and his gang, kidnap Sammy, like, and talk to him and say, you're gonna lose your other eye, and we're gonna break your leg unless you end this relationship. So he obviously had, and they said, or we're gonna do worse. You know, that's for starters if you don't end this. And so, and again, this is all spearheaded by Harry Cohn. And so they have to break...
Again, nice guy.
Yeah, nice guy. So they have to break up their relationship, but also to, I guess, kill the scandal. And so Harry Cohn makes Sammy Davis Jr. marry a woman of his own race. And I don't know about that relationship. I know that I read that they were not together. Sammy Davis Jr. never even consummated their marriage when they were together. Like, they were
It
not...
was an arranged
It was
marriage.
an arranged marriage. So, but I mean, I don't know if she knew him or if she was hired by the studio.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But anyway, so they get basically just some random girl of his own race to marry him, and Sammy is so depressed over this and, you know, being forced into this and everything that he attempts suicide. A friend walks in on him. Like, I guess this is after the wedding or something. Yeah, with a gun, with basically a gun to his head, and his friend obviously talks him out of it. But obviously, later on,
things worked out better for him.
And obviously, they didn't even consummate this relationship. It didn't last. I don't think I have to say that. But later on,
well, obviously, because he later married May Britt.
Back when less people cared.
Yeah.
Back when and Harry Cohn was not involved.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't involved, so who's stopping it?
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things that today it wouldn't even be a scandal. Like,
nobody would even blink an
eye.
Yeah.
But back then it was like a career-ending move, and it was enough to have a mogul basically ruin someone's life to the point where he almost killed himself.
And I know she was very upset about it too. And
Kim,
Kim Novak, and she also visited him before he died too. They like still, I guess, knew each other.
Without Harry Cohn, their lives could have been very different.
I know. It's very sad thinking about that.
Yeah. And we have another sad one next.
Oh, great. A lot of these are sad.
A lot of these are going to be bummers. I'm sorry, guys.
And this is one I feel very passionate about. Lou Ayres. And so with Lou Ayres, basically, he was a conscientious objector after working in All Quiet on the Western Front. And he said if he had never made it, he still would have been a conscientious objector.
A couple of those actors actually went down that path.
Because he got into philosophy, and he really just realized, because he used to actually hunt, and then after a while he's like, no, I can't do that anymore. Because he was just against violence of any kind. And so he was at MGM at the time making the Dr. Kildare movies,
which were obviously popular.
Oh yeah, obviously.
And it was like his comeback.
And he loved making them. But at the time it was World War II, and so they were expecting everyone to sell war bonds, or enlist. And Lou Ayres said he wouldn't, like, he was not quiet about his opinions of being against violence, and so MGM overreacted and like just kicked him out and kept the Dr. Kildare series going, but with Dr. Gillespie now. And Lou Ayres said he never regretted what he did. He would never have changed it. But I guess what we should say is he did become a medic in the war because he knew medicine because of the Dr. Kildare movies.
After living in the country.
Yes, he had to live in a camp.
A little forgotten part of history.
Yeah, exactly. I know people don't really mention that, do they? But yeah, he had to live there, and then he left and joined and
the medics,
he became a medic because he said that as long as he's saving lives, it's kind of like a Hacksaw Ridge situation. As long as he's saving lives, he's happy. He can't physically kill anyone. So why they even turned against him is really honestly stupid, because he still served his country, but by saving lives rather than killing. But he was very, like, he really doesn't get bitter talking about it, so I guess that's what makes it all the more better too. I mean, it's not like really depressing,
and it has a happy ending because his career wasn't dead forever thanks to Olivia de Havilland.
So Lou Ayres is one of the rare actors who had two comebacks, one with Dr. Kildare, the second one with The Dark Mirror, when Olivia de Havilland insisted that he be the leading man in that.
Yep, and she didn't have to do that, so that's nice.
I know, she knew a good actor when she saw one.
Exactly.
All right, so let's get to the next one.
The next one is
very famous one.
One of the most famous classic Hollywood scandals, Fatty Arbuckle. Okay, so this one is again, it's one that
has really been fabricated over the
years. It's been like we were saying earlier, been sensationalized.
I recommend the Mysteries and Scandals of this in particular. It really puts things into perspective.
And there are a lot of books about this that don't go over the top with it and that actually go into detail about it, and it makes it's one that so, and again, what most people know, what happened is that Fatty was at a party, and at this party a girl named Virginia Rappe, I want to say, yeah, something like that,
Rappe,
and
that's what I always called her, but
like in your head, yeah.
A lot of names we don't always know how to pronounce because we don't hear people say them out loud a lot, or we forget.
Yeah. So what happened was she was like not feeling well or something. So she goes into the bedroom and Fatty helps her by like he's basically on the next to the bed. We're on the bed with her.
She had like an attack.
She had an attack or something, and he was trying to help her. And then she got really sick, and medics had to come and take her. And she goes to the hospital where she died, but she was with a friend, and the friend was saying that Fatty Arbuckle raped her and crushed her like bladder or liver,
which is physically impossible.
Yeah,
by the way.
Never could happen.
Although
people today know that, and they knew that back then.
I would think so, but
well, that's why and basically insists that she died because he raped her, and he was so overweight that it busted her body apparently, because that can happen. And anyway, so this goes to court that he raped somebody, and he's acquitted. He's acquitted, and he and again, it's one of those things that, again, when it happened to Errol Flynn and he was acquitted, everybody was like, okay, back to making movies. But for some reason that did not happen with Fatty, and his situation seems to be less murky, because there was even other people there or something. That
it was a drunken party, obviously. A lot of people remember different things.
And but so even though he's acquitted, when a movie of his was playing, people wouldn't see it, or they would riot in the theater, to the point where the theater had to remove his films, and he was
because of the way the press played it up. You don't really blame them, because it was such damning evidence. Even though, like I said, now we know that that's physically impossible to crush someone like that.
And that also, it's one of those things where if you read like a credible source about it, like they go into old detail about it, and they say it's one of those things that today it seems pretty obvious nothing happens. But
also she like, according to Mysteries and Scandals, they mentioned that Virginia was not you, but the girl,
the other Virginia,
the victim, apparently she was saying, he did this to me, but that's because he wouldn't give her money, because he gave her money before, and she always
and I read that too. I read about that.
So she was yelling at that because she was mad at him. And also because, he did this to me when she was having her attack, because she got an attack because I guess it was like, he's not giving me any money.
And it was like the friend overreacting.
It's what really put her over, I guess, what really made her attack come, but
And also the attack apparently occurred a couple days after the party. Like, people dug into that, because at the time they made it seem like it happened during the party, and she had but really, I forgot about that. It happened a couple days after, and Fatty was even saying, like, he gave her money and was even saying, I'll help you, but, I can't just give you money. Well,
I think he already did. Like,
he did. I think he did. But
because he was known for doing that.
Yeah, like, it was at the party, I think, or something like that. Well, anyway, let's move on.
Okay, so now we're going to be talking about
murder.
Yeah, exactly. One that really is one that we really believe.
You can say manslaughter. That's, I guess.
We're gonna be talking about Wally Berry, however you call him, who had this reputation for on screen of being this incredibly nice man who's kind to children, and then off screen, I mean, if you ever read Jackie Cooper's book,
read about anyone,
I know anyone with him, a lot of horror stories, that he was just an awful, mean man. Like Robert Young said he would curse him out. And little Jackie Cooper said that he would like push him away, like physically push him. So yeah.
Oh, what a nice guy.
I know, exactly. And he apparently didn't like animals either. I don't think he did. Yeah.
He didn't like anything.
I know, that's what I mean. Like,
and he would steal stuff from the sets.
That's what I mean. So nobody really liked this guy to begin with. But you see him on the screen and you would never believe it because I know, because he also always plays such nice men, except for a few exceptions, obviously, like Grand Hotel and but
especially silent films. But
those
are heavy. But anyway, so what happened?
Ted Healy.
Let's talk about Ted Healy. Yeah. So Ted Healy was the head of the Three Stooges. He was basically kind of the comedian straight man to them.
Yeah, I mean, calling him a straight man, I guess, wouldn't be fair to
because
Healy,
he was a comedian.
But yeah. And he made a lot of films by himself, and he's actually really, really funny. If you ever see Bombshell, in particular, he's very funny in that. He made a lot of movies at MGM where Wallace Beery worked.
So he headlined the Stooges, but he was like his own act too. He was just his own personality.
Yeah.
So.
And the funny thing is, we're not big fans of the Three Stooges, but we think Ted Healy's funny.
You say we're not big fans. No, we don't watch
them.
We don't. All the other old comedians we love. Like, give us the Marx Brothers, Abbott and Costello,
Wheeler and Woolsey, adore. But for some reason we just never got into the Three Stooges.
Again, because they don't have a straight man. Their straight man, their sort of straight man died.
Because I think they were funnier too when Ted Healy was there, because he kind of
had someone to play off of,
But also, I think he's just naturally. I think he's funny. But.
Well, anyway, so this is out at some bar, I guess.
Yeah,
like some.
I think so. Yeah.
Like Hollywood fancy, like nightclub bar type of thing, and so what happened? Again, who the hell knows?
It's really
vague. Who the hell knows what they were fighting about? But they got into a fight, and rumor has it Barry basically beat him to death.
And Wally Beery was a big guy. Ted Healy was not.
Yeah. And so, and again, just because this is one of those things that, because the story that MGM went with has nothing to do with the rumor, so you wonder how they connect to the point where you kind of have to believe it happens.
Because they would cover up scandals, and and a lot of people say this is one that they did cover up.
Yeah, and so they basically, the story they went with and that they reported on and was reported in the papers was basically a group of young hooligans, because let's always blame on the youth.
Non-identifiable.
Yeah, and who, funny enough, were never ever brought to trial, never found. We know,
know nothing about them.
It was that they beat him to death.
Because why not?
Yeah, it's funny that the police didn't go more into detail about that. A famous celebrity died by a group of hooligans.
A famous celebrity was murdered. Yeah. Let's not go into detail about that.
Well, anyway, it's just one of those. Yeah.
And one of the few modern movies we did see was Hail Caesar by the Coen brothers. And there's one scene.
Not a good movie, but
it's pretty funny at some points. But there's one part where they're in this office, and in the background, and this is all about scandals and how they covered them, kind of a satire of that. And in the background, one part in this office, you just only see pictures of Wally Beery. That's all you see, and it's not really pointed out. But I remember we whispered to each other, because we saw us in the theater. We whispered, "Oh look,
the theater was packed."
Yeah, oh look, there's Wally Beery. They're kind of saying "Oh, haha, look, we know what you did."
Okay, and this next one is a doozy.
Oh my.
Okay. So next one we have is Joan Crawford, one that
Mommy
we kind of have
Dearest,
to talk about.
It's really insane to me that some people automatically associate Joan Crawford with Mommy Dearest. I never think of her as that. I don't think about it at all. I know, that's... I guess if you are an old movie fan, you really don't. No. So when people bring that up, I'm like...
Mildred Pierce in Grand Hotel, how dare I?
I think about all the movies she made. Oh my. But the thing about Joan Crawford is a lot of people always mention how nice she was and that she was a very giving person. So just reading these sort of things from Mommy Dearest is kind of, you're just like, okay, this is strange. Mm-hmm. This doesn't really, feels like two completely different people here.
And also that her other kids say
it didn't happen. Oh. but
except the ones that were left out of the will.
Yeah, well, with Christina Crawford, she was not given money. I think it's because Joan Crawford, she started from very humble beginnings and she wanted them to work to the top the way she had to.
They had all these connections.
Yeah, so I mean, she didn't want to give them any handouts. I think that was
no nepotism.
Yeah, I truly believe that's what happened there, and I think Christina got mad about that because she tried being an actress. The other ones not so much, they went on with their own lives, but Christina tried to be an actress and it just wasn't working. And a lot of people even say, like Myrna Loy mentioned, that she just was not a nice person to work with.
Myrna Loy worked with her on stage,
and she was very good friends with Joan Crawford, by the way.
Yeah, they knew each other before they were famous. Myrna Loy worked with her on stage in Barefoot in the Park and said that she was basically so full of herself, narcissistic, and that she said that to the point where no one wanted to work for her. She said any talent she might have had, who would know, because no one could put up with her because she was so, again, egotistical and demanding and, bulldozed everybody.
So reading the kind of things that she wrote about Joan Crawford, it just really makes us say, did this really happen? Are you not exaggerating?
Yeah, and obviously, most times when children say they were abused, we have to believe them.
Oh, obviously, yes.
But, I mean, it's one of those things that when the other kids say it didn't happen, all her friends say, I never saw anything like that happen. And you have pretty much all of Hollywood rallying behind Joan on this. Like, it's kind of astonishing. It's like everyone who ever knew her said, oh no, we never saw anything like that happen.
I said there are all these you hear all these kind of things, like Marie Prevost, who died young. She was friends with Joan Crawford, and when she was running out of money, Joan Crawford gave her money, I believe that's what happened.
Francitone, her ex-husband, towards the end of his life,
we'll get into that later.
And so it's just one of those things that
really conflicting opinions. I really do.
Me personally, I personally don't
think it happens. I do not. And I think it's I think it was one way for her to get revenge by totally making her look like a monster that she wasn't.
Yeah, and because it's kind of clear Christina Crawford wanted fame. It didn't matter what that fame was, and if it meant writing a dirty book about her famous mother, she was gonna do it, and she was gonna make money off.
And then right after she did, all these other Hollywood kids did the same thing. Yeah,
and it's and again, like when you hear about Bing Crosby, that is similar, like where his other kids say it didn't happen. Yeah, they said he was, unlike with Joan Crawford, they say he was tough, but never to the point that Gary wrote about in his book. So it's
that one's more vague, I guess I would say. Like Mommy Dearest is more of the famous one where we could really pick at it.
We've never read it, never seen
I would never pay money for that book or to see that movie at all.
Well, the movie's garbage.
Yeah,
so why would I want to see it? But even if it wasn't about this, it still sucks. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, anyway, moving on. We have
we get pretty passionate about that one.
Yeah.
So we get to Paul Byrne.
Okay, this is another famous one for
very, very famous.
So Paul Byrne he's most, I guess, better known today as Jean Harlow's husband who died. But so what happened was Paul Byrne, who, by the way, nicest person you'll ever read about. Paul Byrne.
He was incredibly kind to women. Yeah, I mean,
gave money to people who needed it, to friends who needed it, and he had a huge roster of friends. Everyone in Hollywood.
He was
loved
friends
him.
with Irving Thalberg, Norma Shearer, John Gilbert, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. The list goes on.
It goes on, and you won't. Again, he's one that you literally won't read a bad thing about.
No.
I read like a book about him, like the only book about him, but I read books about, tons and tons of people, and I can say he was the nicest person I read about. But, so...
I've never read one bad word about him.
Nope. Well, anyway, so he, again, popular, happy guy.
Very successful. He works behind the scenes.
Happily married to Jean Harlow. So, what was going on behind all of that? Paul had a first wife who was mentally ill, so he technically couldn't divorce her. I guess you can call him a bigamist in that respect. But Jean, people seem to suggest Jean knew about it.
Yeah. Again, that's hard to say because Jean died young, so nobody was really asking her these questions all these years later.
And because they covered it all up.
Well, this is another scandal MGM covered up.
Yeah, they're on here a lot.
Yeah, God.
They were the master coverers. Anyway, so
at least they didn't go to Columbia standards, but
not yeah. Well, they didn't hire them all.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Well, so
that we know of.
So, what happened? So, it seems weird that this guy would commit suicide.
Which is what they suggested.
Basically, they found Paul with a bullet shot through his head and a suicide note, and that was all what was reported. What actually happened, what seems to suggest, first of all, the suicide note is not even written in Paul's handwriting.
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't even try.
That kind of gives it away.
Yeah. Well, and there were a couple other things. One, and they also, the suicide note made it look like he killed himself because he underperformed and sorry for the crudeness here, but he, his body was naked, or at least they, made it naked. Who knows? But anyway, he had underdeveloped genitals, and clearly it didn't bother Jean.
No, it didn't bother really.
Yeah, he dated a lot of women.
Yeah, and it never bothered him.
They didn't complain, but anyway.
He was nice. Oh, believe it or not, they liked him because he was nice.
Like men for their personalities. Imagine that. Well, anyway, so that was MGM's idea, because they supposedly, as the story goes, they noticed that when they investigated the death scene, because they were saying we have to come up with a story because this scandal could kill Jean Harlow's career. Even so, but what appears to have happened was Paul left that night to meet with his wife, who is mentally ill, and he met with her every once in a while, and Jean knew about it and would leave the house and leave them alone to talk things out. And again, because she was nuts. And there was also a chocolate cake there. Paul never ate chocolate, so that's a little odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if he was by himself, why would that be there?
Just eating a chocolate cake
by
himself. Like.
Yeah. And so a lot of people say, because they're pretty damning evidence, she was there, that she killed him.
The first wife
killed him. And again, since she was that mentally ill, it seems to suggest that was likely the case. So anyway, all of MGM, all the moguls are around trying to figure out how can we play this, because we can't, because it looks really bad if, the husband of one of our most successful stars is murdered. Yeah. So it makes more sense.
It looks better that he killed himself.
That he killed himself because he underperformed.
Yeah.
Like, it was all on him.
Yeah.
And
because she's just so sexy.
Yeah. And it was,
because they were just married too. They weren't married very long.
Yeah, but it was a happy marriage. There's nothing that says on the contrary.
But what I mean is, they weren't married very long.
Yeah, and the hardest thing I remember reading about the day was they said convincing Irving his best friend, Paul's best friend, to go along with this rumor, because he said, that's disgusting. I'm not gonna say Paul killed himself because, he underperformed, for something that, isn't true. I'd rather say the truth. And they said convincing Irving was tough, and it took forever. And it really...
And Norma was there, too.
It really got under... That really bothered Irving. Like, I don't think he ever got over that.
No, he didn't.
Yeah. And,
I remember Norma saying that was just one of the worst days they ever went through it. So I think it was really... There was a guilt problem with that.
It's one that, again, it's clear that the studio covered up, because when we look at all the evidence now, it's one, like, again,
the letter
cake isn't written, it's in writing. Well, anyway, okay, let's move on.
Okay, the next one is Carl Dane, another person who worked at MGM. Except this one...
MGM didn't do anything.
MGM's innocent in this case. Well, I guess. It's really the talkies that are to blame.
Yeah.
So Carl, if you've ever seen The Big Parade, he's Slim. He was a comedic actor. He worked with George K. Arthur. And the reason why a lot of people don't know about these two comedic actors that were big in the silent days is because they don't release their movies, unfortunately.
And they did a lot of shorts.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Which I feel would be more accessible today.
If you ever seen the Hollywood Review, they're in that together. But Carl Dane, he was kind of the breakout star of those. He was really funny. Again, if you see the Trail 98, he's hilarious in that. And so he was really his career was really going up at MGM, as being a comedic actor. And then when the talkies came, Carl was born in Copenhagen, Denmark, and he had a pretty thick Danish accent. I mean, I guess I wouldn't say it's so thick I can't understand what he's saying.
It was fine enough for him to play comedic roles in the talkies, but whatever.
So in the talkies, they diminished his roles, like, the more and more he made, and they always made him play Swedes, like kind of like El Brendel, like how he always played like these Swedes. They tried doing that with Carl, even though he has a Danish accent. So his parts got smaller and smaller from that, because those characters also fell out of favor rather quickly. The whole dialect comedian, which Carl really wasn't. So
he was like a more physical type.
Yeah, he really was. And more like the delightful oaf. Yeah. So he eventually got kicked out by MGM and ended up making a lot of bad financial decisions, and his life really wasn't a picnic at all, outside of that too. And you could read more about him, but I recommend you too. But with Carl, a lot of people say that he would sell hot dogs outside of the studio gates, which that's not true. That's just trying to make him look more pathetic. He did work as a waiter, but it wasn't outside the studio gates or anything like that, because he eventually did have to work jobs like that, and so he eventually killed himself. And I guess a lot of people don't really talk about that because it happened after he wasn't famous anymore. It's not like with Paul Byrne, where he was at the height of his career. But it's really one of those things a lot of people do mention every once in a while when they talk about how awful Hollywood can be. And I guess that is really an essential example of that.
That's what Sunset Boulevard was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next we have the biggest, probably.
Yeah, probably.
William Desmond Taylor. And we won't go too much into detail.
There's a lot
because there's
here.
way too much to talk about. I mean, this could be its own post. But, anyway, so I'm sure most of you know about it. Famous Hollywood director of the silent era is shot in, like, the back, kind of,
in his own house.
Yeah, in his own house. And basically, that's what police had to go off
we
of.
don't know
and there
who,
are
like,
a
they didn't know
million suspects.
And we don't know who did it. There's, like she said, there's a million suspects.
It's like George Reeves, where there's so many
Yeah,
things
I
you
know.
can't
As
say.
I said, it's just so vague.
Yeah.
And with William Desmond Taylor, a lot of
It's
movie
not
stars.
Mabel. She's for some reason sometimes a suspect.
I
It's
know.
not her.
That's the thing. A lot of movie stars are part of this, which is
Who have
why
nothing
people
to do with
I know, like
anything.
Mabel Normand, who was good friends with him, but and I guess I think she was around there when they were investigating, but
and she was like, I think she visited him that day or something.
Yeah, but
I doubt she did anything.
Really.
But so in recent years, it's kind of been thought that it was like a, what was it, like it wasn't the drug dealer, was it?
Someone like outside of the whole original suspects you would think of, because I've always suspected Mary Miles Minter's mother, because she was a whack job.
I kind of suspected like gangsters were drug dealers were something. And well, there is a kind of amusing story about it when there were these reporters who I guess are idiots because they were trying to solve this murder.
Or I thought it was the neighbors.
Oh, no, the neighbors that was Jack Mulhall and his wife who saw the figure, and they said that it looked like a woman in men's clothes. But I want to say that was Jack Mulhall and his wife. It was someone actor,
famous,
and his wife. His wife was the one that saw it. Well, anyway, so William Desmond Taylor had he was black and gay like servant who stopped working for him for a little bit and was one of the main suspects. And there were these group of reporters who were like, I bet it's him. I'm gonna get him. So they tried
him and not Mary Miles Minter's mother.
Yeah, no.
Or someone like that.
The butler always does it. Don't you know that? Well, anyway. So they tried dressing up as a ghost because the reporter thought that black people were afraid of ghosts.
Well, I guess when you see movies, they really don't disprove that ridiculous theory.
Who's not afraid of ghosts? I'm afraid of ghosts. But anyway, or I ain't afraid of ghosts. Anyway, so they basically dress up in a sheet,
like a Beetlejuice thing here.
Yeah, exactly. And they say, I am the ghost of William Desmond Taylor, you killed me. And the servant laughs and walks away. And they're like, what did we do wrong? William Desmond Taylor had a British accent.
And also you have a sheet over your head.
Yeah. You look
ridiculous.
Yeah. But that is an amusing story in this whole thing. But there's,
something with a million theories.
Yep.
And again, we don't know what's true, what's not. And also, apparently, King Vidor
visited, because he wanted to do a movie on it.
Yeah, and
this is the late 60s.
And he visited Mary Miles Minter. She was still alive, and one of the suspects in this case. And her mother was still alive too, and she was still living with her mother.
Oh, I thought she was dead.
Or yeah,
no, the mother was dead. She was just talking.
Oh yeah. She said, "My mother killed everything I ever loved."
It wouldn't surprise me if she thought that.
Yeah.
If she just assumed that.
Because her mother wanted her to stay all this really virginal screen, her screen image, and she had a crush on William Desmond Taylor.
Needless to say, that got shot to hell after he died.
You think?
Yeah. All right, Bianca, why don't you take the next one?
Take it away. My favorite actor here, and we'll get to Virginia's favorite actor later.
Our favorite actors are apparently shrouded in scandal.
Well, it's not really their fault here.
Neither one is, but anyway.
So, my favorite actor is John Gilbert. And so, I guess a lot of people misunderstand what happened with John Gilbert, because a lot of people suggest that his career went down the hill because he had such a high, squeaky voice.
Oh, you saw Queen Christina. It is so squeaky and
I know, it's so funny.
It cracks me up.
Well, so I even read in textbooks for films, when they talk about talkies, they're like, oh, John Gilbert, he had such a high squeaky voice. I remember going up to one of my professors in one of my film classes saying, this textbook is wrong.
You told me he looked at me like I was.
I know, he's just he's probably thinking, who's John Gilbert? Well, anyway, what a lot of people suggest with John Gilbert, and what I believe is that Mayer, who hated John Gilbert, sabotaged his career. And a lot of people who knew him, like Mary Astor, and I know Robert Wagner mentioned this in his book too, that John Gilbert's, and Ralph Bell mentioned this too, John Gilbert's voice was not high pitched, it was higher. They said it was like Leslie Howard's, where obviously Leslie Howard has a high voice, but a lot of people wouldn't think that back then because he had a British accent. He was distinguished, and John Gilbert didn't have that. So a lot of people suggest that also, if you see his early clips, they made his voice higher than what it was so that he can look really bad, and they purposely put him in bad movies, even though today a lot of them have gotten a following, and they're really not that bad, but they did purposely put him in awful scripts that were not fitting for the biggest star at the studio.
Should I tell him about Ralph Bellamy?
Yeah, and Ralph Bellamy was a witness to this.
So basically, Ralph Bellamy, and he said
he worked with him in West of Broadway.
Yeah, and this was Ralph's first movie.
It was his second.
His second. You're
first
right.
Movie is The Secret
You're
Six.
right. You're right. It's A Secret Six. But yeah, so Ralph said that in West of Broadway, he said it was super obvious that they were doing everything they can to force John Gilbert out, to make him quit.
Because he was getting more money than anyone else at the studio.
Because he was the biggest star there, before talkies hit. Yeah. And so he said that they would make him do a brutal scene and purposely not turn on the cameras. Like, they would, you know, a scene that requires a lot of physical, one, I think, where he had to get, you saw the movie, I didn't, where he had to get wet or something, or maybe a horse stunt. It was something weird.
Yeah.
And they would do things like that on purpose, and they would just try to tick him off. And he said that, John wasn't taking the bait, but Ralph said there's a doubt in his mind that they wanted to force him out, and he said that and he liked John, you know, he said he was nice.
Everybody did.
Yeah.
Except for Mayor, because he had a Oedipal complex.
He said Ralph Bellamy's never, you'll notice in his filmography, he never worked at MGM again. He said after that,
he made his first 2 films there.
Yeah, he said he didn't care, you know, what they offered him. And even though he made his first 2 films there, he said after that, he said no. Anybody who would do that to somebody, he said he wouldn't work for.
And I also just want to clear up one last thing, too, with why Mayer hated him. He had an obvious Oedipal complex, and John Gilbert did not like his mother. Understandably, his mother practically abandoned him and treated him like he was dirt. And so one time when John Gilbert wanted to get this book adapted into a movie with him, they were talking about this one female character, and Mayer says, "Do you mean to tell me this woman is a whore?"
Imagine that, a movie about a prostitute. Oh my god.
And he said, "Why not? My mother was a whore." And Mayer hated him after that. And
but it's like it doesn't affect you.
No,
man. It has nothing to do with you.
And Irving Thalberg fought for him, but after he was no longer the vice president, there wasn't much else he could do. So John Gilbert's career went down the drain, and all because of these things that weren't his fault, and because what many of us believe is sabotage.
All right, so this is a pretty quick one. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Sexy Rexy.
So Rex Harrison. So he was married, but that didn't stop him from going on with other people.
Well, like he was the only one.
Yeah,
but...
really. Like we should condemn Rex for only Rex did this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he had an affair with Carol Landis, and
Hollywood star.
Yep, Hollywood star Carol Landis, and
he was married to Lily Palmer at the time.
Yeah, at the time this happened.
Another star.
So, and that's probably why.
A lot of people
so much of it's covered up,
yeah.
And, well, Carol Landis died, like, from suicide, and what appeared to be suicide, and I'm not suggesting she was murdered, no, but, like, I mean, it didn't seem to be an accident, it seemed to be suicide, and Rex was the last person who saw her. That's it, basically.
Like, so did she kill herself over him, or?
Yeah. Ooh, oh my gosh, what happened?
A lot of people like to mention this one.
Yeah. See, and I mean...
Again, because 3 stars were affected
She
by
could have... If she did commit suicide, it could have been for something else other than this. But, yeah. But, anyway. It's just also because he was the last person to see her alive, so it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
And so we get to another one I'm passionate about. It's another quick one. It's Robert Herron, a very famous silent film actor, especially from D.W. Griffith films like Intolerance.
He's the lead in Intolerance.
Yeah.
He's the boy.
He's a boy. And he always worked with Mae Marsh, the girl. And he's an incredibly good actor.
The dear one. She's the
dear
one.
Yeah, she's the girl in other things.
Yeah.
But he's an incredibly good actor. So people who say that silent films have really big gestures obviously never saw Robert Herron.
They don't watch a lot of silent movies then.
So Robert Herron,
like, oh, you saw, like, you know, a fool there was or something. Yeah,
exactly.
That? Yeah.
You saw like one scene from it.
Yeah, because I doubt they both sat through it anyway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So Bobby, as a lot of people call him, Bobby Herron, he suddenly died when he was 27 years old, and said it was an accident. He confessed to his priest before he died that it was an accident. Apparently, one of his brothers, I think it was John, I'm not positive on that, had a gun, and Bobby didn't like guns, so he said, I'm not going to have a gun in my house, and he put it in a drawer and forgot about it. And then a while later, he was taking some pants from the drawer, the gun fell out, and then went off and shot him in the left rib. And so a lot of people suggest that he committed suicide because D.W. Griffith wasn't using him anymore.
Because people, when they commit suicide, naturally shoot themselves in the ribs.
That's where you shoot.
Not the head, not the throat, the ribs.
It took him a while to die, too. But also, he was forming his own production company. He didn't need Griffith to get jobs. He was a good...
But also, it's not like he... I mean...
He was moving on.
Yeah, it wasn't like he was waiting around for Way Down East to happen. Yeah, no, like, because people seem to suggest, oh, it's because Richard Barthelmess got that part. No, I don't think that has anything to do with anything. I think
he would have been just fine.
And
like I said,
I think he was legitimately moving on. I don't think he was like waiting for that part.
As a lot of Griffith actors were at this time. Like his his fellow co-star Mae Marsh moved on around this time too. So I don't know why a lot of people suggested he committed suicide. And also he came from a very religious family, so he wouldn't have. I don't think he would have ever lied to a priest about that. So yeah, that's kind of just so strange when the people try to pull strings at, and you're like, oh, come on.
You're like, it's way more simpler than you're trying to make it. You're trying to make it into like a whole like George Reeves. Is it suicide? Is it? Oh no, it has nothing to do with that.
It's pretty straightforward, I think.
Okay, next we have
God.
Yeah, so we have Barbara Payton and Tom Neal, and okay, this one is a weird one.
I want to say, for the most part, I like actors in movies. In old movies, I tend to like most of them. But I remember the first time I saw Tom Neal, I was like, there's something about him I don't like.
And it has nothing to do with his acting or anything.
There was just something about him that rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't know what it was, and then I found out later he beat up one of my favorite actors. Maybe that was why.
And he's a murderer.
And he's a murderer.
Yeah. He can fuck off.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, so
sorry, we are really passionate about Francho Tone.
Yeah, I love Francho.
I know he's a favorite actor we both share.
Okay, so let's first talk about Francho. So Barbara Payton and Tom Neal were dating, and she starts dating Francho Tone basically while she's kind of still dating Tom Neal.
Yeah, she was dating him at the same time.
Oh, good for her. And so Tom Neal gets jealous and basically beats Francho Tone half to death, and Francho Tone is passed out for several hours, I think, and has to get stitches, surgery, all this stuff, and afterwards marries Barbara Payton. Well, guess what? She was still seeing Tom Neal during all that, like, the time they were married briefly.
And movies wouldn't hire Tom Neal after that either.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah.
It was like if Wallace Beery had way more witnesses.
Yeah. And he wasn't as famous.
Yeah. Exactly, he was a B.
Because Francho Tone was way more famous than Tom Neal was. Yeah. So
yeah, and also they're going to
boxer, so
they're going to sympathize with the guy that got beaten up. Like, they're not gonna. Yeah.
Tom Neal was a boxer, so that was an unfair fight.
Yeah, and so she's still seeing Tom Neal, and Francho gets like a private detective evidence, divorces her, and then. Well,
don't worry, he married someone else. He's fine.
And Tom Neal ended up marrying someone else
too.
Oh
God. Well, he married two people after that. One died of cancer, and the other one he killed. He shot
her in the back of the head, I think.
So, yeah.
She was trying to drive away with their kids.
Yeah.
I think to basically leave him, and
I wonder why.
Yeah. Well, he got her back by shooting her in the back of the head, so with the kids.
'Cause that's better than letting them go.
With, like, the kids in the car. Or whatever they were in, and so it's like, I guess it's a Laura situation. If I can't have you, no one can, I guess. Well, anyway, so you want to talk about the trial?
So apparently, they wanted him to get the gas chamber for this, and then he somehow walks out with involuntary manslaughter and only served, like, I think 6 years in prison.
You don't shoot someone in the back of the head. That's not manslaughter.
That's so stupid that he only got like 6 years in jail for killing his wife.
I could see, like, Wallace Beery. That you can say that's manslaughter,
even
though this is this is murder,
cold blood.
Yeah.
So that was odd.
Yeah. Okay, so next one, we're not going to go into way too much detail on it. We're just going to kind of talk about the Red Scare a little bit.
The Hollywood blacklist.
And a little bit on some people who name names.
Or the people that were victims of it.
Okay, so obviously the big one is Elia Kazan for naming names. He had connections to the Communist Party, and basically to save his career, he named names. And again, it's one of those situations. you understand where he's coming from because he wanted to keep his career, but at the same time,
you understand where everybody else who's mad at him.
Yeah, you can understand why everyone's mad at him, because not only did he screw people's careers over, but also it's one of those situations where other people who name names were haunted by it. Like, it bothered them. Like, Sterling Hayden, like, I think I read he had nightmares or something. Like, yeah, he, like, never got over the fact that he named names just because he was, like, connected to the Communist Party. And Gary Cooper had to name names, and he, you know, was so bothered by it, he made High Noon, and he basically went out of his way to apologize. Like, he tried to apologize to everyone, and everyone took his apology.
I would say one of the few people that actually forgave.
Yeah, too. And it was also one of the few people to really apologize. Yeah. But it was one of those but it didn't seem to bother Elia Kazan, you know. I mean,
it should have.
I'm sure it did, but it didn't bother. It didn't bother him like it bothered Sterling Hayden, who I think named names that they already knew and stuff like that. But
I think for the most part that was what happened with a lot of them. But it's funny that people always talk about Elia Kazan, but they don't talk about someone like Lee J. Cobb who named names too. Like, I know he's the one that named Rose Hobart.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I remember a good interview with Rod Steiger where he talks about how on the set of On the Waterfront, this was like, obviously, because that's kind of what the film was about, even though it's
him trying to defend what he did.
Even though naming names of communists and naming names of mobsters that's not on equal footing. But anyway, yeah, it's way more noble when Marlon Brando does it. But anyway, so, and Rod Steiger on the set of that found out, because he was going to have dinner at Lee J. Cobb's house. He was going to have spaghetti at his house. And when he was going, I think it was a crew member or somebody said to him, "Oh, why are you going over his house? You know what he did, right?" And then so he told him about both Elia Kazan and Lee J. Cobb. And he said after that, he said he had to go to dinner with him. And he said he couldn't even look at him. He was like, you know, why would anybody do that? It was, you know, like, rat everyone out like that. And Rod Steiger, even though, like, he got, like, an Oscar nomination for that part, he never forgave them. He remained mad at Elia Kazan until his dying day.
And if you read Elia Kazan's, like, autobiography too, like, he doesn't seem to mention, like, when he's talking about On the Waterfront, doesn't seem to mention the tension that was there.
Like, between the cast and the crew and just everything about it, and just from Hollywood at the time.
I mean, I think he does talk about that, but you know, also at the same time, it's kind of like, this is, I think, what a lot of people want to hear. And we do want to hear sort of any kind of apology, because you look at all the actors that were affected somehow by the blacklist.
Larry Parks, who was one of the first one too, and he's like crying in his testimony. It's hard to watch and even see pictures of it, because it seems like, you know, it's a guy losing his life basically,
and he has a wife and kids.
Famous wife. It's funny how,
wasn't she pregnant at the time?
I think she was. It's kind of, but I mean, it's interesting how Larry Parks and Betty Garrett remained married forever, but a lot of Hollywood marriages couldn't make it work. It's like, oh no, they were able to make it work with the blacklist, like how Gene Parker and Edward Dmytryk were. Well, anyway,
but you also look at John Garfield, and it basically killed him, this blacklist, because he had a weak heart as it is, and they went after
his daughter
him.
Even said it killed him.
Oh, I have no doubt of it. And I think they said they were going to go after him or Edward G. Robinson or Danny Kaye, because those are three big liberals in Hollywood. They went after John Garfield, and look at what happened. He's suddenly, I mean, he couldn't get a lot of roles at Hollywood, if he did, like, they weren't, it wasn't at, like, a lot of them were independent ones, or he worked with other people who were blacklisted. And then he ended up dying from his weak heart, because it just wasn't enough to stand that.
Or he would work with liberals who weren't like, oh my gosh, I'm not working with you. Well, also, I think it's important to mention how the films at the time were stupid, like, and again, some are better than others, but most are really stupid, and the actors didn't even like making them, but they just sort of had to make them.
Like the whole Big Jim McLean, like Nancy Olsen didn't like making that.
She made it so she could go to Hawaii, which I don't blame her. But
and then a lot of people would came up to her like all these years later and say, "I saw you in that." She's like, "Oh, great."
No, I also, like, she said that she read the script and she said, like, and she was like, "This is a piece of shit. No one's gonna see this." And then she said, and no one really did. But then it got big on TV, yeah, and then so she said that's why it gets talked about. She was like, oh, I dodged a bullet there, but nope.
For the famous The Red Menace, which is just
garbage.
And there are no stars in that one.
Yeah.
If you're gonna watch I Was a Communist for the FBI, even though it has a silly title,
it has speechifying, but it's at least, like, it has credibility behind it.
It's based on a true story,
yeah.
Like the Iron Curtain, that's also based on a true story. Yeah. So.
The ones that are based on true stories, stick with those.
Don't stick with stuff like The Red Menace, which is just
stupid, or My Son John, or anything like that.
Yeah, nothing like that.
I think I remember turning on the TV and My Son John was on for like 5 minutes, and I was like, God, this is terrible.
There's a lot of actors I like in that.
Yeah, not enough to sit for that.
No, I
would have to riff that.
I have to be a day when I'm like in a really like in a mood to critique something
or riff the shit out of it. Yeah. Well, anyway, let's move on. Okay, so next we're gonna talk about another big one, and another one with murder.
Thelma Todd. A lot of people have recently said it has been murder, even though at the time it was labeled a suicide from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Didn't she also have like broken like bones or something? Like, because naturally when you commit suicide, you break your own bones beforehand, so it could be extra painful when you go.
So I have Dorothy Lee's book in front of me, and
you should say the title of her book.
Her book is called Dorothy Lee: The Life and Films of the Wheeler and Woolsey Girl. And these are based off of interviews of her, and she knew Thelma Todd quite well because she worked with her and Wheeler and Woolsey in some pretty funny movies.
Like, Thelma Todd was going to be the Dorothy to Bob.
Yeah,
basically.
They all wanted that to happen because they all had so much fun making those films.
And they all were friends, right?
Yeah. So here's Dorothy talking about it. She says, her death was labeled a suicide, but if you knew her, you know that she would never have committed suicide. We all knew that she didn't do it. When they found her, she was in her car, and the garage door was down. You had to pull it down, and the motor was still running. They said she died of carbon monoxide poisoning, and as she fell forward, she hit the steering wheel and knocked one tooth out. She had capped teeth. They said she fainted or turned the motor on herself. That's nonsense. First of all, she was too sharp to pull the garage door down with the motor still running. There's no way she could have pulled into her garage and not have turned it off. Any person would automatically turn the motor off before they got out of the car to pull down the garage door. And then there was a door leading from the garage to the house. I've been a guest in her house many times, and that door was always open. But when she died, that door was closed. She wasn't the kind of person who would have committed suicide. There's no way she would have done it by accident. Me, Bert, Bob, all of us felt that there was no doubt in the world that her ex-husband did it, but it could never be proven.
I think that's all we need to say about it. Yeah. All right. So, next.
Oh, yours. You want to take it away?
Uh-huh. Okay. Next is my favorite actor, another silent...
This is one we don't really like talking about.
No, this is a tough one to talk about. And this is, another silent film actor. And again, the problem wasn't his voice, where MGM trying to sabotage him. It was just... It was a number of things. It was kind of, I guess...
Name.
Oh, right, yeah. But anyway, it's Roman Navarro. And so, again, I love Roman, and so...
He's your favorite actor.
Yes, ever. I wrote a whole blog post about him and how deep my love is for him. Well, anyway, so Roman Navarro. So, and again, this is one a lot of people know about, and it's one of those things where he seems to be known more for his murder than his movies, which is ridiculous. Yeah. It's like John Gilbert, how people will say, "Oh, his voice," rather than the big parade. Yeah,
like that.
Like if they're talking about Roman Navarro, they'll say like, "Oh, Ben-Hur," and then the second thing they'll mention is, "Oh yeah, like he was murdered." Well, anyway,
it's like Billy Haynes. Oh, he was gay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Rock Hudson too, basically. Yeah. Well, anyway, so Roman Navarro, he was an alcoholic and he was gay, but it's unclear if any. It's pretty unclear, like if both of those were, if something else, if parts or something were what killed his career at MGM. It's kind of hard to just say it was one thing. Definitely, it could have been a variety of things, like the parts he was getting after a while, or alcohol and being gay, because he was, what Roman Navarro, like, his close friends knew he was gay, but he was pretty discreet about it, unlike William Haynes and a lot of some other actors at the time. He kept it pretty quiet, so MGM didn't mind it too much. Well, anyway, so later on in his life, Roman, to get companionship, would seek it through, like, a male, like, escort service. I guess you can call it a male, like, a gigolo service. Well, anyway, one time he invited 2 guys over. And it's one of those things that's foggy, especially since the testimony from both men in court kind of contradicts each other, because they kind of say, the younger one says, oh, it was the older brother, and the older brother says, no, it was both of us. Well, anyway, so basically Roman Navarro invites them over, gives them some drinks, and then he goes upstairs with the older one, and it's kind of unclear what happens, but the older one starts beating him up and asking him where he has money hidden. And
kind of like an in cold blood situation.
Kind of. And Roman Navarro keeps telling him he doesn't have any money, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and it's the younger one, meanwhile, is downstairs on the phone with his girlfriend, because why wouldn't you be talking to your girlfriend while somebody's being beaten half to death upstairs? His girlfriend claims that she heard a man, like, basically calling out in pain, saying, stop it, you're hurting me, in the background, and she didn't call anybody, so she sucks. Anyway, like, wouldn't you call somebody about that? And anyway, so the younger brother goes upstairs and supposedly helps the older brother beat Roman Navarro up, and this is in the late 60s, and Roman's in his late 60s when this is happening. And everyone says Roman put up a good fight. He was alive for a long time, but he would keep passing out from the pain, and they would have to revive him by putting him under the shower and, running water on him so he could wake back up, so they could keep asking him where he has money hidden. And again, he keeps telling them he doesn't have any money, until eventually he's basically passed out, almost dead. And he eventually died drowning in his own blood. And so they say, oh, we have to cover it up so it looks like we weren't here. So they end up tying Roman's hands behind his back, and they scratch part of his face to make it look like fingernails dug into his face, and then they wrote on, like, the window of the bathroom where he was dead, it was something stupid, like, us girls don't like F-word, meaning gay man, to make it look like it was a woman that did it. Because, anyway, and so they ended up getting arrested later, because the older brother, like, basically sexually harassed a waitress. So I think if you were on the run, you wouldn't do something that stupid, but these guys were stupid.
I don't think you'd do something like that anyway.
You're right, but yeah, I feel like you would want to keep a low profile if you were on the run, I'm just saying. But anyway, so they end up getting arrested, and then they tie them to Roman's murder, and they go to court, they're found guilty, and I don't think they get life or anything. I think they both ended up getting out. I don't know if they're still alive today. They better not run into me. I'm gonna,
Don't let them.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, what? Oh, you know what you did, you stupid fucking ass. Stop. I didn't do this with John. Well, John wasn't murdered.
Okay, no.
Punks. Well, anyway, it's also one that people try to add all these extra context to, because it's like, oh, a murder involving a gay man. There's so much we can do with this in the tabloids, but that's, again, it's one of those that's a little foggy, but we know the key details, and it's one of those things it's simpler than a lot of, like, the Hollywood Babylon and all that tried to make it into. Yeah, I think the judge even had to clear some things up about it. Well, after that, let's get to something a bit, okay, so this is another one. Again, people take this way,
totally take it out of left field.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about Lana Turner quickly, and the murder of Johnny Stampado, I think that's how you say it?
Yeah, I think so. And this is another one a lot of people talk about, but again, once you look into the details and you actually read credible sources about it, it's pretty easy to pick up what happened.
So, Lana was dating Johnny Stampato, and
A gangster.
yeah, he's a notorious gangster, and so apparently her daughter Cheryl Crane heard him saying that he was going to hurt her, kill her, and so she killed him to defend her mother, and
so, and also what the tabloids made it seem like is that Lana really killed him and made it look like her daughter did it, to not like her career or anything. And
she would have never done that. Her daughter meant everything to her.
And her daughter says, and like, she's still around now, and she insists, no, I killed him. Lana didn't. I was helping my mother. Yeah. She said my mother would never, ever in a million years ask me to do that.
I know, yeah.
Like, and again, it's one of those things. Lana is long gone. Why would she lie? Why would the daughter has no reason to lie about this? Why would she, like, it's just one of those things I think people try to add an extra layer to make it more interesting.
Yeah.
Because it is such a, like, again, it's such a, like, piece of it's just such an interesting story for the tabloids. It's
just the way they really made it look like trash and made it seem like oh, Lana, look at what she did. She's making her, like, putting her daughter out there when she would have never done that.
Nope.
Anyone who knew her would
and
say so.
So many, like, people at the time and columnists took the bait, which you're like, why would you do that? I understand it's back then, and the story is high, and there's all the energy of what's going on, and you get caught up in everything, and now looking back, it just seems so ridiculous that you would do that, but whatever.
It's pretty straightforward. And we'll get, and the next one is pretty straightforward too. It's Wallace Reed, or as we call him, Wally Reed, who had an addiction to drugs.
So Wally, it was an addiction to morphine he got after on the set of the Valley of the Giants there was an accident, and Wally got crushed. Basically there was a train crash, and all the cast and crew were on this train. I don't know, I forget who the lady is in the movie, but basically she was gonna get crushed, so Wally took the fall for her when it was happening, but he got in major pain, obviously, and so in the hospital they gave him morphine to ease the pain, but he ended up getting addicted to it in the process.
This wasn't uncommon back then. Peter Lorre had a
lifelong you're right.
Morphine.
Well, he was able to. He
went through bouts of it.
Yeah, I read that he was able to get over it, but like the side effects never really wore off. And you're like you said, it was up and down.
Yeah, most of it, like, it started when he was in Germany.
Yeah. With Wally, it wasn't an up and down thing. It was
just down.
Yeah, he was addicted, remained addicted, and basically, instead of trying to send him to rehab or, try to get him off the stuff before, it became worse, the studio was like, well, if you want morphine, we'll give you morphine. Yeah, just get back to work.
Yeah, just as long as he's working.
Yeah.
And apparently did the same thing to Alma Rubens when she had that problem. She ended up dying from it, too. They just kept giving it to her, like, as long as she's working.
Yeah, it's, again, just like Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney, and it's also because Wally was, like, the biggest star in the world. Like, he
was their biggest money maker.
Yeah, and he was the biggest...
At Paramount, by the way.
Yeah. He was the biggest leading man at the time, because the only people bigger than him were, like, personalities like Chaplin and Fairbanks. But after them, Wally was probably the biggest star. And he did, dramas like comedies. Yeah, he was, the Jimmy Stewart, Fred McMurray type.
He was the male equivalent of Gloria Swanson at the studio, because they were at the same studio.
And so... And again, Wally, nicest guy you can meet. Everyone who worked with him loved him. And so, but even during his addiction, he was still a great guy that everyone loved, and everybody talks about how he had no ego. Like, all his friends talk about that.
Yeah, I know he's good friends with BB Daniels.
Yep.
She's also good friends with Valentino, and she said about both of them, just two of the nicest guys you
Yep, and neither had an ego.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They could have, but they didn't. And so... the addiction got so bad, and he's constantly being fed morphine from the studio, and he had to go to rehab, and he died in rehab, and this was in 1922, 23? Yeah, 22, I think. And he was 31, I think. Yeah. And it obviously, and this is sort of the scandal that shook the world, because it it happened around the same time as William Desmond Taylor, and all these stories started coming out
like how
around this
Olive
time.
Thomas and Bobby Harner at the same time, so that's when people are like, Hollywood's this awful place.
Yeah, because they, represent everybody in Hollywood apparently, but anyway, it was and that's when they started cracking down more on scandals, and that's when you get, studios kind of trying to patrol people
and have more of a production code in their film.
Yes, exactly, because
it wasn't enforced.
It wasn't enforced yet, but they got toned down a bit at this time because they didn't want Hollywood to seem like a dirty place. And I mean, you can say that
they should see it now. Maybe they won't feel so bad.
Yeah, that's true. Well, they wouldn't be able to see it because of all the pollution, but
can't even see the Hollywood sign.
Okay, but again, it's sort of, this is one of the scandals that made Hollywood scandal what it is, and it made Hollywood
lore.
Yeah, exactly. Made Hollywood take extra precautions to look out to make sure that, they didn't look too bad. All right, well, next, our last one. Big one. Let's go.
So this is someone we both like. He's been a favorite of mine for as long as I've been into old movies.
Yeah, you one of the first old films you saw is one we're going to be talking about.
It's Robert Walker. And one hell of an actor, let's say.
Oh yeah, I think that, he turns parts that could be basic into something brilliant, And, okay, so where do we begin?
He's the inspiration for Alain Delon, wasn't he?
He's one of Alain Delon's favorite actors.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good taste.
You can tell, too. But, so, I guess we begin in...
Since You Went Away?
Yeah.
So, Robert Walker was married to Jennifer Jones, and happily married, it seems. They had 2 sons.
So I was happy.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Everything was going just fine. They were...
Dory.
Yep, they were starting careers out in Hollywood after being in radio for a couple of years.
Yeah, radio and stage.
Yeah.
And mostly
small
radio.
Small roles.
Yeah.
And so Jennifer Jones met this producer named David O. Selznick. I don't know if you know who he is.
They
no,
do.
I'm joking.
I know you're joking. I'm joking too.
Well, anyway, David O. Selznick was just interesting guy. That's a nice way of saying.
That's code for he was. You want to say it?
An ass?
Yeah, an asshole.
Yeah. So David O. Selznick hires Jennifer Jones to be in the Song of Bernadette. And he becomes infatuated with her, even though she's married.
Obsessed with her. It's creepy.
Even though he's married and she's married with 2 children, he
has kids too.
Yeah.
2, I think, as well. Yeah.
With Luby Mayer's daughter Irene.
Who everyone liked Irene a lot.
Yeah, she was good friends with a lot of people.
Friends with Paul Byrne. Yeah.
And Katharine Hepburn.
I think because I know Paul was friends with both David and Irene, so I assume he was friends with both. But anyway, moving on.
Anyway. Yeah, all these connections we make.
Yeah.
Well, so he becomes infatuated with Jennifer, and while they're making Since You Went Away, he after Song of Bernadette, it's a big hit, and then they're making Since You Went Away, and she gets her husband Robert Walker to be in it, and he recently came into good fortune himself. Jennifer Jones won an Oscar for the Song of Bernadette. We'll get into that, I guess, during our Oscar month. But so Robert, he made Baton, where he completely stole the show, and so he now is under contract to MGM Studios, so they're both doing very well. So they make Since You Went Away, and it's during this filming where
Robert realizes that something's going on.
Yeah.
And
Joseph Cotten talked about this.
Yes, Joseph Cotten talked about this. So basically, another reason why Robert is in this movie is David O. Selznick basically just to be petty and to be a dick.
Yeah.
So he just have Robert around and say, look, I have your wife, ha ha, type of thing. And how because it's David O. Selznick and he was always on the set.
Yeah.
Like he is in every movie.
Known for being a miser on
Yeah.
the set.
Oh yeah. And directors hated him to death. Yeah. All you have to do is read about Alfred Hitchcock. Just read about Alfred Hitchcock and you'll know what I mean. Anyway. Yeah, we're King Vidor. So and again, everyone else, Joseph Cotten said, nobody talked about it because it was so awkward, and he's around all the time and rubbing it in Robert's face that he's with his wife, basically. And Joseph Cotten, again, saying no one's talking about it, and it's just sort of that elephant in the room nobody dares talk about, but he said, we're all on Robert's side because, how could you not be? He's being put through torture, and he didn't do anything. And so basically after that, and again, we say this, it'd be different if David O. Selznick was just like the greatest guy. He was so nice.
Funny.
If he was Paul Byrne, it would have been different. Yeah. But he's not. He's slept with
this guy that nobody liked.
Yeah. Or you can read about what Joseph Cotten says, that when he first met him, they said, what did you first think about when you met David O. Selznick in an interview? When they're interviewing Joseph Cotten said, honestly, how ugly he was. He said he was hideous. Like, he was bloated, fat. He had, like, these bad glasses. He said he had warts all over his face. He said he was just not, he wasn't attractive.
Yeah, put him next to Irving Thalberg on
Yeah.
Day.
And again, it'd be different if he was nice, but he was, like, Marlene Dietrich called him the most hated man in Hollywood.
Yeah, and she never specifically said why she didn't like him, but
yeah,
she did not like him.
He hit on every actress. He was Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
And who would hit on all these actresses a lot and if you said no, your career ended. Dorothy Lee writes
Dorothy Lee's book, and it mentions it.
Yeah, she turned him down because she has standards, and yep.
And he ended up making her part really, really small, even though she was one of the stars of the film.
Yeah, and again, no one was stupid. Like, Bert and Bob and everyone knew what was going on.
They didn't like him either.
No, they hated him.
Well, he went up to them and said which one's Wheeler and which one's Woolsey.
Yeah. So everyone hates David O. Selznick. Yeah. Like, you won't read too many people who liked him. There was even, like, again, the people he discovered, the people under contract with him, a lot of them, they'll kind of...
Fontaine didn't
no, she did not like him.
Didn't like him.
No. They'll kind of talk their way around it. Like, Gregory Peck will say, oh yeah, I thought he was fine, and we got along, but he kind of talks around how much of a dick he was. Yeah. He's like, basically saying, yeah, he was nice to me, but he was kind of a dick.
Nice to me.
Yeah.
Not Robert Walker.
Yeah, just asking about Robert Walker. So this basically ruins Robert Walker's life. He goes...
And his career is doing great.
He is soaring. And, again, critics love him, audiences love him.
A fantastic, fantastic actor.
He's just a likable presence. And you would never know watching his films that he is going through depression and raging alcoholism at this time.
And having to use medication.
Yeah.
From how bad it is.
Yeah, from how bad everything is. And there's also the story about when Jennifer went to MGM to do Madame Bovary, how she's on set with, two people, Vincent Minnelli and Van Heflin, both, guess who they're friends with?
They both knew Robert Walker, both worked with him.
And considered, they were considered, I guess, as close to him as, I mean, as much friends as you can be with, like, a colleague, I guess.
Yeah.
At least with Robert, because he was difficult to be friends with.
Yeah,
mainly not because he was mean, or just because he kept to himself. Obviously,
he was quiet, but as were Van and Vincent.
Yeah, so they got along with him, and so again, they weren't mean to Jennifer, but they would ignore her. Yeah, because they.
And when she'd walk around the studio, everybody else would ignore her too, because everybody in that studio
knew Robert,
was friends with Robert.
Yeah.
The crew. Same.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah, and
they knew
she would, like, lock herself in her dressing room and, like, not come out, and it was, again, it was your decision to do this, but anyway,
there's gotta be some consequence, some kind.
At least Madame Bovary is probably it's probably her best performance.
So maybe it's because she is Madame Bovary.
Yeah, but at least we got her best performance. She got her best performance out of this.
It's very good.
It's a great movie.
Yeah. On so many levels.
Yeah.
See it, but yeah.
Yeah. And as I think most people know, Robert Walker, after, like, Stranger on a Train and My Son John dies while filming My Son John.
One of these films is not like the other.
But... yeah.
And he gave the performance of his lifetime in Stranger on a Train. And
Hitchcock loved him.
Also, he hated Selznick too.
Yeah.
And Mayer liked him too, and he didn't like Selznick. He was his former son-in-law.
That's something everyone can bond to, their hatred for David O. Selznick.
So he had a lot of people on his side, but still he ended up dying very young from his problems.
Yep.
It was, they gave him something to, when he got like a panic attack or something.
Something like that,
but it
yeah.
contrasted with his antidepressants.
Yeah.
And it ended up killing him.
Yep.
So I don't know. Who would do that? What if they know that wouldn't work?
Well, I think we figured out that some things a lot of people should have known and they didn't.
Yeah. That seems to be a running theme here.
That is a running theme. A lot of these things could have been easily prevented.
Which is what makes them so frustrating.
Yeah. Okay, anything else you want to add?
Well, just a reminder, next week we'll be talking about Oscar films. It will be Best Actor first, so we'll be saying who we think should have won Best Actor for only the old movies. So up to
We're not going to start with Best Picture, or are we doing that last?
I guess we'll say that for
the
last.
Grand finale, yeah.
But and we'll only be going up to 1965,
yep.
as we usually do.
Yep, that's usually our cutoff.
As it is for Leonard Maltin, so.
Yep, we go by his book. It's the Bible.
It is our Bible.
Okay, and before we close things off, if you want to watch some films on the weekend, and so for the weekend, I recommended Blackboard Jungle. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. Pretty much most of the films this week I've already recommended in the past. So, but yeah, Blackboard Jungle. If you haven't seen it, definitely make sure you see it. And Bianca recommended.
Oh, I recommended Varsity Show with Dick Powell. It's one of his fun musicals, and Fred Waring's in it, so that's fun. And Mrs. Brown, you got a lovely daughter. If you like rock music like we do, it stars Herman's Hermits, who we love.
Yep.
So if you like fun little musicals, those are what I recommend this weekend.
Okay, so have a fun weekend, and we will see you next week when we will be all Oscar.